Oh my God, the story, it never ends. Mock trials. We also have mock drafts, mock game yesterday. That wasn't even real. Mock all over the place. Nada Edwards joins us today to break it all down.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast. And that does include YouTube, where if you're watching, you can see me, Walker Mail, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 on Wes and Walker. You can see Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Also Locked On NBA with Hayes and Matt Moore. And you can see Nada Edwards back on the show, Eye on College Basketball podcast producer with Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish. And you know, when Nada hops on, sure, we'll talk some Hornets. We're going to talk mock trials, but also we're going to be talking about the draft. And Nada, you seem to be making more frequent appearances earlier and earlier in our show because it's time to talk draft earlier and earlier in the NBA season. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm just I'm sad we're talking draft in February. I thought y'all wouldn't need me till at least after the tournament, after I've gotten my sleep and everything else like that, after the marathon. But unfortunately, the season is already over, and we got to start talking about Ace Bailey and other guys, Cooper Flagg, obviously.
Yep, February 13th, we sounded the Nada siren. So Nada Edwards joining us today on Locked On Hornets. Real quickly, I did want to tell everybody that we do have a new Locked On Hornets daily newsletter, a one-stop shop for your ultimate league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Hornets newsletter. Doug is still writing about this Mark Williams thing. It does not end. It's actually kind of crazy at this point. I want the content to keep contenting. I had the wrong idea on this earlier where I said I was fatigued. I was tired of all of this going on. Doug said, I'm not. Have you seen the YouTube numbers? I was like, yeah, you know what? You're right. I should care about that. And I do. I absolutely do. I would like to see some kind of resolution to this Mark saga, and it doesn't look like it's going to come anytime soon. Dave McMenamin, ESPN NBA insider, he's the LeBron guy. He followed LeBron. He was there in Cleveland, and then he goes to LA when LeBron goes to the Lakers organization. Dave McMenamin tapped into the NBA, tapped into the Lakers franchise. He hops on the Rich Eisen show yesterday, and he says this: the Hornets are not giving up on this deal. They're going to try to reverse it again. They're not satisfied with the Lakers' explanation of Mark Williams failing the physical. Later on, he would say, there's going to be something of like a mock trial, and both teams will present their cases. This reminds me of some kind of like Boy Meets World, Mr. Feeney episode of trying to impart what legislation is like in the real world into his classroom, and everybody makes their fake cases. This is some kind of mock trial, and Adam Silver is just going to be seeing over it, where the Hornets are not going to get this trade reversed. The Hornets are not going to get Dalton Connect on their team. I can't imagine that the Hornets get the unprotected pick, the pick swap, but this is where we are. Nada, I'll go to you just because we haven't heard your thoughts on all of this. Just from Mark Williams' trade to where we are now, there's a lot in between.
Yes, there is.
What's been your thoughts on all of this?
It's been utterly nuts. I am proud of the Hornets for fighting on this lie, especially this new regime, because under the old regime, I think the Jordan regime would have just taken it and laid down and let the leagues and let the Lakers and let their media slander the entire just new regime. So I do appreciate them fighting on this. I do think this is crazy. I do wish the NBA would just be like, look, let's just let the Lakers and the Hornets, let's just mediate this. Maybe we put a few protections on that 2031 pick, and then you deal Mark Williams. But the fact that we're holding three guys in limbo with Cam Reddish, the fact that we're holding these guys in limbo and we're going to a mock trial over this feels a little extreme. Maybe just me.
Doug, do you feel the same way? Because we have gotten your thoughts on all of it. Where are you now with a mock trial in place? And Dave McMenamin's words, I wonder how much, do we take them literally, trying to get the trade reversed? Because that's how I'm taking it, right? It would be different if the Hornets were doing this for respect, for reputation purposes, and for Mark's value purpose, and Mark would understand that. And if that's the case, then I can understand going to mock trial with this. This whole conversation sounds ridiculous. Going to mock trial would make sense to me if you were trying to salvage Mark's value for himself, and he understood that, and trying to salvage your reputation. But if you're trying to get the trade reversed and then it doesn't happen, and now you just have a pissed off Mark Williams on your hands, well, that's what I've been afraid of all along when the Hornets first were reported to have looked to challenge this. What'd you make of McMenamin's comments?
Well, we should say that Dalton Connect played for the Lakers last night. Mark Williams still listed as not with team. So I would say, if the Hornets are doing this for Mark, that message is not necessarily being received. I think the question you have to ask at this point is it worth it? And if it is, then you have to let the Hornets work it. If they can put their thing down, flip it, and reverse it, then I think you have to give them that chance.
I agree. I think that was well said, Missy Elliott. No doubt about it. Doug Branson.
Look, if
with
they
the
do,
takes and the hot bars.
If the NBA does a mock trial over this Mark Williams thing, I think it should be televised. I think it should be during All-Star Weekend. It should spice up the weekend. I think the proceedings should be overseen by the Honorable Charles Barkley. We should get Chuck in the black robe, give him a gavel. And, if we're just going to go goofy with all of this stuff and get crazy, let's just do it over All-Star Weekend.
I love all those ideas. Nada, going back to you to kick off of that.
Who's going to represent? By the way, who's going to represent Jeff Peterson? Is he going to self-represent? Is he going to pull someone else from the Hornets sphere? Maybe someone with some experience dealing with the Los Angeles. Oh my God, Mitch Kupchak is going to represent Jeff Peterson in the mock trial. He's going to say, my client, made a trade. A trade is something when two teams. They get together and they exchange players or picks, sometimes cash if your owner's cheap. I rest my case, Your Honor.
I like the idea of Steve Clifford representing Jeff Peterson and said, make the bleeping trade.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll make the trade. Sorry to inconvenience you. Now go back to your draft dungeon and grind film. So do we end up in a place? Okay, so Mark isn't playing with the team.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to find any real source behind the rumors of Mark refusing to play outright for the rest of the year with the team. We obviously know that he's not with Charlotte. We know that he's not playing for Charlotte. That we can see ourselves when we watch games such as what we saw last night. But I don't know if Mark is, drawing a line in the sand that is permanent and telling you that I'm not going to play for this team anymore. That seems to be the question. I had that question initially after the trade was rescinded. Mm-hmm. The Hornets come out with their statement saying he's our starting center. Okay, well, the only way to resurrect any kind of value, only way to figure out if he is going to be your franchise center is to bring him back. The only way to prove that he's healthy, I guess, is to play him, right? That would be a statement if he played the rest of the way. So it seems like he's going to play. Now here we are where Mark still isn't back, and the Hornets are trying to get this trade reversed. I know you have been one where you've kind of questioned Mark playing all along. Are you still there?
I'm still there. I don't think that he's coming back. I'm personally thinking that at this point, we're talking about a guy and his representation that is saying, nah, we're done. We're going to wait till this summer, or potentially you buy us out. Something along the lines of that, where at some point this relationship is over. There is no trust. It's finished. We're cooked. And let's just move on and amicably break up at this point.
Doug, does Mark play again for the Hornets?
Tough call. He is represented by Excel and Jeff Schwartz. I mean, that's a big time agency and a big time agent. So one would expect him to know how to play this game. I think if you're Mark, it would benefit you to play. Like if the Hornets aren't interested in buying you out, maybe there's a little bit of a battle there to see what their interest is in doing that. But if the Hornets aren't interested in that, which they traditionally haven't been, although when I brought that up in the Every Hornets Boxscore chat, Keith, a longtime listener and supporter of the show, brought up the fact that they have bought out Reggie Jackson multiple times, which I responded, Yes, but I feel like that's a rite of passage for any ownership group. Like, you have to show that you've done that to even enter the CBA negotiations. Yes, this is my I've waived Reggie Jackson card. Go ahead, sir. So that's what I would say to that. But, I think it would benefit him to play, because right now he has the thing that he did not want most. Mark Williams told us this. He does not want to be injured guy. And so you don't want to be injured guy. You also don't want to be guy who hasn't played basketball in a long time. I mean, that's going to even, I think, hurt your ability to join a team that you would like to join even more. It behooves both parties, I think, to find a way to get him some play time before the season's over.
Yeah, and by the way, you're right. When I brought up old ownership, Michael Jordan being inclined to buy guys out, Mitch Kupchak told us that. He was on the mic, he was in front of the camera, saying they don't usually like dealing with buyouts. When I mentioned that, I was actually told by the Hornets, like, yeah, this is an ownership group that's actually less inclined than the old regime to do buyouts. So I'd be surprised if Mark Williams was bought out. And honestly, what benefit does that do for the Hornets? You would be buying Mark Williams out for the sake of Mark. And I'm here for the human factor in all of this. I really am. But goodness gracious, can you imagine going from getting an unprotected pick, a pick swap, Dalton Connect, which is essentially another first-round pick, and then just not getting anything for a guy that you still had some visions of being your franchise center? Like, to me, so if this regime is less inclined to do buyouts than the old one, who didn't want to do them, and there is no benefit to you for doing this, I understand the people part of this, but like more so, I think that kind of gratitude is extended more towards players that have accomplished a lot with the franchise. Yeah. And there just hasn't been that with Mark, as much as I love him, right? God, I love Mark. He's a great guy. That's why I want it to work. And I feel worse for him than even Dalton Connect. I got some bad feelings for Dalton. Like, that sucks that you got traded and now you're back with the Lakers. But man, your value isn't nuked. Like, everybody knows what you're still capable of. This is Mark just getting played around with, going back and forth. I understand Mark's feelings on all of it. I still think somehow, some way, if time has to go a long way, whenever it may be, I do think Mark suits back up in the purple and teal. But I feel less confident about that than I did when I saw the statement. That's for sure.
I just can't wait until this is appealed and put in front of the NBA model United Nations. I just can't wait until we get to that point.
Doug, I'm glad we got like 15% serious Doug at the very end of that, because you were hurling all sorts of nonsense at us, and it was fun. We got 15% serious takes from Doug, which is all I needed in that first segment. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
That's why we bring in the big guns, baby. Nada Edwards going to help us with the NBA draft. Who should the Hornets be looking at, not only at number one, but if they don't get the number one overall pick, who else could they be looking at in the top 5, top 7, any of those players available? Nada Edwards, stick around. We'll be right back in just a moment on Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by Wayfair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. I'm currently looking for some furniture in here, trying to spruce it up just a little bit in the studio. If I turned this camera around, then you would understand what it's like to have a cluttered space, and I'm trying to get back in the swing of things. Wayfair, that could absolutely help me. There's something for every style and every home, no matter your space or your budget. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every space, and even more so. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's Wayfair. Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Doug, we've already gotten a taste of your love for mock drafts this season. How much have you been diving into the pool of mock drafts as the month of February has gone on?
I mean, I think I would have gone deeper into the pool, but I've been a little distracted by everything else that the Hornets have been involved in. So,
Fair.
No, this is why I'm excited to talk to Nada, because I got to play a little catch up here.
It's fair. Okay, so I'll start here. Let's live in a world where the Hornets do get the number one overall pick, right?
Oh, I love this world.
Let's have that dream, okay?
Okay.
you don't trade LaMelo, you still have Brandon Miller, and now Cooper Flagg is a part of the equation. So what does that look like to you, Nada? Like, I don't know how many other people out there are as well versed in Hornets land and NBA draft land, right? So, like, how does Cooper Flagg work with LaMelo, with Brandon, with this team? And is Cooper the dude? Like, is he someone that comes in and you pop champagne and the confetti falls down? Is he that kind of guy?
Yes, he is. He is quite literally the best player in college basketball right now. At 18 years old, he leads basically every statistical category for the Duke Blue Devils right now. Everything, like points, rebounds, blocks, field goal percentage. So he's going to come in and at minimum supplant Brandon Miller as the number 2. Maybe even go as far as supplanting LaMelo Ball after a certain point. He is going to be that good. He does a little bit of everything. And you're talking about a starting lineup at this point of Ball, Miller, Flagg, Bridges, and then insert center here. It might be Nurkic, it might not be. But that's going to be good enough to compete immediately for 9, 10, maybe even 6 or 7 at this point, because they're going to be that good, and it allows you to do a whole bunch of other things with your bench.
Go ahead, Doug.
Okay, so if the Hornets don't land the number 1 overall pick, I hate to take us out of this world. We're going to have Nada back and dig a little bit deeper into each of these individual prospects, but I think we should just kind of do a rundown of the options here. So if they fall out of the number 1 spot and let's just go to 2. Let's just go right to 2, and they've got a choice to make. Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe. You know the Hornets. What should they do in that position?
It's Bailey. It's Ace Bailey, and it's not close. Ace Bailey is the only guy that I would put even within the same library, much less the same book as Cooper Flagg. He's got his issues with his passing, and I understand that. But at the same point, he's been better about assist rate. He's been better about passing. He's just a microwave scorer. So if you're talking about a Hornets team that needs more offense, it needs guys that can actually put the ball in the bucket. Ace Bailey is clearly the number 2 for this. And then if you're going to talk about number 3, this is going to be a little bit controversial, and I know people are going to be mad in the comments. I'm taking Edgecombe over Dylan Harper because I think Dylan Harper adds more problems than he actually solves in drafting him. Edgecombe is a better three-point shooter than he's been given credit for, super athletic, fits into that 2-3 range. So if you want to keep Brandon Miller at the 2, you can. In terms of just scoring, I would say we look at a Keontae George and what happened when he joined the Utah Jazz. Scott Drew systems tend to tamper down scoring ability. So I would say he's number 3, then Dylan Harper's number 4. Despite the fact that he's a big point guard, my question is, how much do you actually want to take the ball out of LaMelo's hands? And with a guy like Dylan Harper, you're going to have to do that.
Well, we just had that discussion yesterday on Locked On Hornets that I don't think, particularly with all of the ankle injuries that the team has had to deal with as it relates to LaMelo Ball, I don't think you have the luxury anymore of saying, well, does this guy fit with LaMelo Ball right now? I think it's still until you even sniff the playoffs again, you got to go BPA. And so if you believe Dylan Harper is BPA, then I think you have to go with that. But I'm interested because you said he causes more problems than he solves. Like, run us down on some of the problems you think, but outside of LaMelo Ball, just with his game.
The personnel problems are quite literally the issue with that. I do think that you run a risk of annoying, in fact, pissing off your $50 million player by drafting that guy that high. Otherwise, I think he's an excellent point guard. I do think that if they want to move on, and I'm not saying they should, but if ownership chose to move on, Dylan Harper's a very adequate replacement. But at the same time, I've seen a little too much to be like, okay, I'm done with the LaMelo Ball experience, or I don't care what LaMelo Ball wants. That's my hang up with that. That's the only reason why Harper's 4 and Edgecombe's 3 at this point for me.
Doug, you had something you want to go ahead, man. You got the mic. It felt like you had a reaction to what Nada was saying. You got it.
I'm just so juiced to talk NBA draft. With Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, and maybe you can throw VJ Edgecombe, are all 3 of those guys, would they be in number 1 overall pick consideration in a world where Cooper Flagg didn't exist?
Ace Bailey, absolutely. Ace Bailey is absolutely a number one pick.
And you're not worried about the shot diet, because I heard a lot about. I haven't done my deep dives yet, so I'm really just kind of talking off of what I've seen around. And Walker probably watches more college basketball than I do.
Only Cooper. It's all ACC, baby. Ace who? What was it? The deck of cards? What? Cooper Flagg is the only guy I know about in this conversation.
But I've heard a lot about Ace Bailey's shot diet in terms of just 2s to 3s, but also like shot decision making. He takes shots that maybe he shouldn't. Are you worried about that at all?
No, because I think we have to understand that Rutgers, outside of Dylan Harper, really isn't very good. And there aren't guys that are going to play in Europe on that team, much less in the G League. So I don't worry about it as much. And I would also say, since the turn of the calendar, January 1st, he's been better about that. I think he got a little too shot hungry, a little too shot happy, but he's been working more within the flow of the offense and been much, much more efficient, to the point where I have no problem drafting him at 2.
I'm sorry. I know every time Walker wants to jump in, I get this look on my face, because I just had this great question, which is which play, again, it's not going to be Cooper Flagg, because I think everyone has him as consensus number 1. But which of these players am I going to fall in love with and want the Hornets to draft, and then they don't, and then everybody gives me bleep about it? Like which player qualifies as the scoop of this draft? Is it Harper?
It's Dylan Harper. It's going to be Dylan Harper for you. And then honestly, I would throw Kasper Siakachonis over there, the Illinois product, who I think can be drafted in the top 5. I'm not as high on him. There's Liam McNeely out of UConn, who I think is very, very good. And
hold on, I want you to stop, Nada. And this is I don't mean to cut you off, but there's one guy I know you're really high on, and it's a fascinating fit with the Hornets given the circumstances surrounding Mark Williams, and I want to tease that. There's one guy I know you love, and I want to tease that. So coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Doug peppers Nada with questions, even more so in the final segment. No, we're gonna get Nada. I don't know if this is your favorite guy, but just underrated guy. Not I know you love him, so stick around and find out who Nada loves outside of the top 4 and their fit possibly with Charlotte coming up next. All right, after I rudely cut you off, I apologize, but I thought the tease was too good.
Because I know exactly who you're talking about.
The tease was too good to pass up. Well, I'll allow you to bring him up. So, given the Mark Williams circumstances, center is absolutely now a part of the equation. Who's your guy? Now to tell the people.
Derek Queen out of Maryland. Honestly, the closest thing to Alperen Şengün that you're probably going to see for the next 5 years. Back to the basket guy, can score any which way you want. The defense isn't as bad as Şengün out the box. To me, he's the guy that you probably target. There's also Asa Newell out of Georgia, another big that reminds me a little bit more of Chris Bosh in a way, that you can basically put him at the 4 or the 5. You can go big and do a whole bunch of other things. Those are the 2 bigs that I think you probably should look at. The Hornets probably are looking at and probably had no problem, which is why they had less misgivings about dealing Mark Williams at some point.
Okay, so here's I'm not kidding. I have watched the highlights, not a full game, but I have watched the highlights of Queen's big time game that he just had recently. So it was basically just all of the offensive moves on display. And you're right, my man is skilled, dude. He's fun to watch offensively, but again, watching the offensive highlights, it does look like there's some stuff to be desired there defensively. But so is that, how real is that? And the other question real quickly is, how does he fit with Charles Lee, who does like having some kind of defensive anchor at center that can roam, but also give you something in drop coverage?
I think he's a guy that you live with what he can do offensively. I think that's someone you can absolutely live with. And as someone that made the book night over Şengün mistake, I'm not making it twice.
Fair enough.
That's one of those that I think he's going to be very good. But also, Ace Newell out of Georgia is a guy that probably would fit more in the mold of what Charles Lee wants in terms of a roaming big, can absolutely move his feet. He's not going to get targeted on a pick and roll on a switch. And he's got this 3-point range out the box already as well.
Okay, go ahead, Doug. What else you got for the draft?
What about Igor Demon? BYU 6'9" guard. Seems like he can make any pass that he wants to make. Started strong, but then faced some tougher competition and maybe stumbling a little bit. What are your thoughts on Igor Demon? If the Hornets were to fall, I mean, God forbid they fall into like the 7-8 range.
7 or 8.
I don't even know if that's possible, but would Igor Demon be somebody that you would look at?
Demon is not someone I would look
Demon.
at. Yes,
I turned him
Igor
into.
Demon.
I'm sorry. I turned him demonic. I turned him into a spirit, an evil spirit. I apologize. Igor Demon.
Igor Demon. I'm not the biggest fan because of the turnovers. I think that he's got a bad turnover problem that needs to get fixed. And he's one of those guys. I'm not taking over a Liam McNeely. I'm not necessarily taking him over a Con Knipple out of Duke as well. That fit a little bit more of what the Hornets are looking for. I do think that I can't even say it myself, is very, very
just
skilled.
Call him Demon.
I can't. No. He plays for BYU. I can't necessarily do that.
That makes it even better.
Right. He does. They do not want that.
No, they do not want that. So as much as I love Igor, I think that there are some turnover problems. I do think that there are guys that you can get that he's a guy that I'm not sure you draft with the idea of starting. A lot of these guys that you can draft in the top 10 are guys that you can start almost immediately. Like you draft a Liam McNeely, Josh Green automatically goes to the bench. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. So that's how good this draft is, where you can go 8, 9, 10 deep, and you will get a starter, a long-time starter. Not necessarily an all-star, but a very long-term starter.
That was going to be my question.
That's a good question. Like how far do you have to go down before you get to a player that the Hornets would not immediately start?
Yeah. 11, maybe.
Wow. I don't know what that's. I don't know if that says like this draft is strong or the Hornets are that weak, or maybe both.
No, this draft is that strong. This draft, do not get it twisted. It's one of those things where I hope they find a way to get in the lottery, a second shot in the lottery, because I think they can rapidly improve this team, even if you have one of those guys like a Con Knipple coming off the bench, because I think this draft is that strong where you're getting 11, 12 deep where you can get a starter.
Okay. Did you want to recap Magic at all, or did you want to save that for tomorrow, Doug? Your call.
Well, I think we should get Nada's thoughts if he has any on the game, because I'm just going to assume that we made him watch that game, that he had a choice. He didn't have to watch it, and because he knew he was coming on, he probably did watch it, and I don't want to put him through that and not get any of his analysis on what happened last night.
Shout out to Nick Smith for understanding the assignment on getting in the locker room in the second half before halftime. He knew this game didn't matter. He decided, if I'm going to get KCP kicked out, I might as well do the same thing and just head on out and do solid vet move from a second-year player. Outside of that, Nurk looked great, and that's all I got, really.
Nurk looked great.
Nurk looked good, and really the first round pick was the value. You have to wonder, like we see this though. We also got all of the players in the OKC Gordon Hayward deal, and everybody looked so much better than Nathan Mensah. Sorry, he's the butt of the joke too much. So what's going to happen with Nurkic down the line? I think that's a fair question, but he did look good against this Magic team, and we know that he's got some playing chops before. The thing I want to talk about too. I apologize to whoever you are. You can at me on Twitter or whatever, but somebody tweeted out that Damian Baugh might have the least amount of time elapsed from signing with the team to putting up their first bucket. Damian Baugh, I'm looking at news. Damian Baugh news tab on Google. 23 hours ago on Real GM, Damian Baugh, Hornets agree to a 2-way contract, and then immediately scores a bucket. And not only that, gets to double digits, baby, off of the bench. 16 points, 5 of 8 from the field, 2 of 4 from three-point range, hit all 4 of his free throw attempts, only a couple of turnovers. Like, nice box score. Damian Baugh still clearly, having only been with the team officially for hours, trying to figure out the system. But given all of the circumstances and who you are as a player, okay? Big tip of the cap, in my opinion, to what Baugh showed you last night, just at least offensively, because there's no way that man should have been shooting that well, given the lack of time with the team.
That's a hooper, man. That's a hooper. Just coming in. I don't care about plays. I don't care who I'm playing with. Just give me the ball. I mean, he looked way more confident than he had any right to be. It was his NBA debut. It wasn't just his Hornets debut.
It's crazy.
First NBA game against the Magic. I mean, it wasn't against the Wizards, although it might have been worse if it was against the Wizards, the way the Hornets have played against that team. But it was against the Orlando Magic, a good defensive team, and he was able to score those points. Now, you mentioned the turnovers. He did make some very poor reads on those passes. So, I don't think he's going to score 16 points a game.
He tried to skip pass. I like the idea, but it was a overzealous pass. But oh well, man. Overzealous, that's what I want in my two-way guy.
He's got an NBA body. He knows how to use it. I think that's exciting. I think what's also exciting is that he wasn't a part of the Hornets system. That it was, again, this team looking outside the bounds of the Greensboro Swarm. Like, it's cool. You want to develop that system. You want to find guys and bring them in. But when there's opportunities to go out and strike and find a player who's playing well for another team that's not under a two-way contract, you have to take advantage of that. You have to put the bodies around the country to look at those players, or at least in Greensboro, when those teams come to visit. The Hornets are investing. I love that.
I mean, honestly, at this point, I'm just proud of the guy for just understanding that it's time to get buckets and it's time for just showing up and showing out. And also, dare I say, he might be better than Isaiah Wong already.
Well, he's bigger. I mean, that's the thing with Isaiah is that he's not shooting well and he's so slight that when he drives, there's just no chance. And he's not a great passer. So, yeah, I mean, there's not a lot you can do with that. But he's, 6'4". I don't know what he weighs, but he looks big. So Damian Ball, I'm excited.
Two-way scouting. Nice job so far. Moussa Diabate getting his contract converted into a multi-year deal. We liked the Mo Gees of the world. We liked the Summer League guys of the world. We like Damian Ball. If I wonder how much or how far that carries you, that type of scouting. If you can just pick those guys and they turn into something, whether it's a multi-year deal or whether it's just impressive debuts immediately upon putting the jersey, then, yeah, I think that's impressive stuff from the scouting department. So go ahead. Last thoughts.
My last thought is that I've got a lot more on Nurkic, and I think there were a few other interesting things in this game, and a game in which it ended up being a blowout, but I think there's some things to talk about. I wanted to really put the focus on the draft on this episode, so tune in tomorrow. I have a lot more thoughts on Yusuf's performance here right before the All-Star break.
At the Hive, by the way, they had the tweet about Damian Baugh. So shout out to At the Hive, because I think you're right. Just one of the players to have the least amount of time that goes by from signing with the team to scoring your first bucket. This has been go ahead, Doug.
Well, I was just going to say, and he's from the same high school as Brandon Miller. I don't think they crossed paths because I think Ball's a little bit older, but just interesting. Cane Ridge High School, Antioch, Tennessee, right down the road from where I am. So I don't know, just an odd thing.
Okay. That was Nada Edwards. Helped us out with the mock trial nonsense. Helped us out with the NBA draft early conversation, February 13th. We're bringing him on to seriously dive into the NBA draft. Make sure you're listening to Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish. This is the man, Nada Edwards, that makes him sound good behind the ones and twos. He is the producer of the Ion College Basketball Podcast. It is the College Basketball Podcast. Nada, thanks so much, man. I'm sure we'll be having you on frequently for draft stuff.
Absolutely. And one more thing. We do a Thursday just draft deep dive. Myself, Adam Finkelstein, Kyle Boone. We do it once every Thursday. We tape them Wednesday. They come out Thursday at 10 on the CBS College Basketball YouTube channel. So we do that as well. If you need more of a NBA draft fix, and I'm talking specifically to you, Doug, because I know you can't get enough.
I need it all.
So there you go. There's more for you. Yeah.
There's no excuse for no mock drafts on Thursdays now, Doug, or Fridays, the day after. Now you know exactly where to go get your draft talk, even though there's never a bad excuse for you as to, bringing up a mock draft.
Yeah, I'm not ready for daily mock drafts yet. They're not coming out with the frequency that would be required to do that, but we're getting there. I can feel it.
We are getting there. All right, that'll do it. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods. That includes YouTube, Nada Edwards, Ion College Basketball Pod, Doug Branson, EveryHornetsBoxscore.com, plus Locked On NBA. And I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.